All right, I've seen some hands, and I think Sam signed up first. So
I signed up. Yes, I did.
Great. And then we'll just have to take turns.
Look, excuse me. Excuse me.
Name and address, please.
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, and members of City Council, good evening. And my name is Sam Latier. My address is 8515 West 57th Street. Usually when I walk up here, I don't have a smile on my face, but I do today because I'm really happy to hear what I've heard from this council. Thank you. And it looks like the type 2, I'm hoping, is on its way out. We just don't need it. But we still need to think about this type 1. And I just thought about this, that if Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and Ewing Kauffman came to live in Merriam as young men, we wouldn't have a Kauffman Cultural Center, and we wouldn't have the Apple computer. Because the current laws of Merriam and the proposed laws don't allow that to happen. The two Steves, and the reason is they started working in a residential garage. And Ewing Kauffman started working in his basement putting pills in bottles. Well, this doesn't allow you to do that. They're using equipment that you don't find in a domestic place. In fact, nobody had a computer that the Wozniak and the other guy put together. But rest assured, innovation is not dead in Merriam. As Dave Neal pointed out, there's 800 to 1,000 people, businesses, illegally operating in Merriam, and they're flying under the radar. And some of those are going to innovate, and some of those are going to come up with creative ideas, regardless of the terrible law and the law that you're planning or looking at right now. These people, their first obligation is to feed their family and not lose their home. The current and proposed laws are bad laws because they try to solve a problem that does not exist. They are not enforceable. They force Merriam residents to break the law. Look how much time and effort we are putting into a law that only has 40 permits today and 7 complaints. That's crazy. We are all, and I think probably most of the people are here today because they're interested in this issue of home offices.
Speak for yourself.
Well, okay.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, I'll speak for myself. And I think we're here because Brian Dyer has written an unpopular zoning law regarding home businesses, and it's been approved by the Planning Commission. At least I make the assumption that Brian wrote the law, but I can't be sure because we always hear staff. I keep hearing staff recommends this or staff believes that. And I think the council should be asking the question, what individuals actually wrote the proposal? What input did they get? Did they get input from the council? Where did their input come from? Did residents talk to them? These are important questions that need to be asked. Mr. Dyer and Carol Whitlock, chair of the Planning Commission, offer this sales pitch, it's a sales pitch, as the reason that the City Council should approve the proposed ordinance. The new ordinance relaxes restrictions, it's easier to get a permit, it's faster to receive the permit, and the applicant only needs to certify that he or she follows the rules, and then they get the permit. And that's what I heard at the Planning Commission meeting. I maintain that the old ordinance is bad, and the proposed ordinance is worse. Yes, it is true the type 1 would only have to send out first-class mail instead of certified letters or collect signatures. It is true that the applicant might be able to get their permit in 14 days instead of 30 or 60. Still, the negatives outweigh the positives. Instead of making it easier to get a permit for a type 2 business, I heard it here tonight, don't require permits for type 2 businesses. Why does a computer programmer need a permit? Why does the poet laureate from Kansas, Robert W. Jennings, need a permit to write books and poetry? We are trying to put out a fire that isn't even burning. It sounds good when Mr. Dyer said that all the applicant has to do is initial the rule and sign the permit, self-certifying that he, she agrees the applicant has a permit. And as Councilmember Dave Neal pointed out, it's not in the law. It's not mentioned in the law. What can happen? Now, we say staff, we'll look at, well, the staff is Mr. Dyer. So let me just say, if Mr. Dyer suspects the applicant is not complying with one of the rules, like not have over 20% of the residents used for the business, the law does not prevent him from denying a permit until home inspection are completed.
Mayor,
Yes.
public comment is 5 minutes, and it's been over 5 minutes.
I've timed this for 5 minutes.
But how much further do you have to go?
It's just very quickly.
To wrap that.
Okay. Okay, so what happens is, this, he can now go in and do an inspection, and now you're looking at Fourth Amendment, which is unreasonable searches. It also good when he says it'll take 14 days instead of 30. What that means, though, is you're taking the approval away from a public committee and you're giving it to an individual. That individual is making the decision in the privacy of his office. We're giving permission for one city employee to make a decision on a person's livelihood, the ability of a person to feed their family and keep their home to one individual. And yes, there's an approval process. But then to get to the approval process, the person is out of business for 30 to 60 days. So I ask the council to reject this proposal. I ask you to not send it to the planning commission. I ask you to get your own committee together and leave city employees out of this. Come up with a policy. That's the job of the city council, is to make policy. The job of the staff is to support the city council. And it's sometimes going the other way. And that's my request. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
I guess I could come forward.
Yes.
My name is James Lopisto. I live in Seal Cottage on 61st Street, east of Lamar. Most of the questions that I had when I came in here have been answered, and much to my satisfaction. One thing I might point out, if we're trying to establish how much of a home is being used as a business, they could surrender a tax return, because a tax return may have some percentage of the home being written off as part of their itemization. And then I also am curious if the city council also falls under the umbrella of this as being employees of the city that doing the city's work at home with city's laptops and iPads. Are they going to have permits too? Question. Just a thought.
Are we also included in the home?
Thank you.
Again, as we said earlier, this be your primary source of income, and I am very positive that this is not your primary source of income.
And with regard to an earlier comment about Fourth Amendment violations, we don't do inspections. There's no inclination we're going to do inspections. That's never been done here. That requires much more than us just showing up at your door and forcing in and doing inspections. The law already prohibits that. So just want to make sure everybody understands
How long
that.
is search and seizure?
Turn back to you. Miles. Name and address, please.
Dennis Miles, 9213 West 48th Street, Merriam, Kansas. I represent, I'm the owner of the Stay Safe Locksmiths. I have a occupation permit, and I have my van out in the parking lot right now. That's where my office is right now. And I go to other businesses and residential and do locksmith work for them. I have a permit because I park my van in my driveway. I don't have a office in my home. My office is in my van. I have a computer in my van. So everything that I have is in my van. Now, I understand having the permit because, like Mr. Dyer said, it allows the city to know that I am doing business, okay? But I don't understand my classification. Am I at 1 or am I at 2? I don't have customers come to my house. I don't want them to come to my house. When I'm home, all I want to do is sleep. You know, I don't want people knocking on the door saying, but it does happen. During the windstorms we had last year, a lot of residents lost power and couldn't get into their residence. So they walk over to my house and say, Mr. Miles, can you let me in my house? Am I supposed to say no? Because you can't come to my house, you see? No, I'm going to go help them because they're my neighbors. So, and I don't have materials in my house, they're in my van, but they are on my property, you know, because they are in my van. But they're only on my van while I'm home. So, is my permit just allowing me to park my van in the parking lot? Another question I have is the signage. My van is a large van, and it has signs on it. There are only on 3 sides, but they're larger than 6 square feet. I think that locksmithing is a very competitive business. You have to compete with the other locksmiths in town. And if I had smaller signs, I wouldn't get the notice of me being a locksmith. And I was told that I was grandfathered on this, by the way, so. But it's only like 12 inches difference. But I think that the size shouldn't really matter on signs. You know, so that's something I think that you guys should think about. You know, what classification am I? Am I a 1 or am I a 2?
You haven't broken
As you described it, I'm going to right now say you're probably going to be in the 2 category.
So if they put a 2 on here, then I don't have to pay the $50 a year?
That could potentially be the case, yes.
Notice there wasn't a promise there.
That's not a promise. But even, I mean, if you guys took it out, and I still would be a 2 because I'm not having customers come to my house, I don't store materials there.
I think the answer would be that that's possibly the way it could be written up, but we won't know that until it's written up. You have to read it.
So that's something to think about. You know, I appreciate the time. Oh, and your situation, okay? You teach woodworking, right? I do. Okay. So this gentleman, I'm just picking on you because I like you. But I'm used to it. Thank you. He goes home and he makes woodcraft. His profession is a woodworker. So is he making money on the crafts that he's making money? I'm a locksmith. I go out and do it. If I do it at home, you know, I agree with everybody that it's my business what I do in my home. You know. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Name and address, please.
My name is Billy Crook, and my address is 667.
This boy's pretty good too. Oh, he is good.
Yes. The current and proposed home occupation regulations restrict the number of persons allowed to visit people's homes on the name of business. Yet we do not restrict the number of persons allowed to visit people's homes for baby showers or parties or weddings. I don't think it's fair to target productive citizens with additional restrictions on visitors. I think limitations on vehicular parking and traffic would be reasonable and adequate to preserve the residential character of neighborhoods. That is, after all, the basic rationale for this ordinance. But as written, our ordinance restricts people, not just cars. And I think it's unfair to encumber the right of productive citizens to peacefully assemble in their own homes. And I hope that the right to peacefully assemble is a phrase familiar to all of us. I also believe that it is unfair that Type 2 home occupations should be made to apply for a permit at all. By the definition of Type 2, they are not observable outside the home. Thus, they cannot affect the tranquility of a neighborhood. and should not be encumbered by the permitting process, even if it is free of monetary charge. The cost to liberty is something that I would not ignore. Type 2 home workers improve the safety of their neighborhoods by the very presence during the day, decreasing crime, and they decrease traffic and pollution by not driving to the office every day. On page 21 of the ordinance before you, section 74-468, occupations are excluded from protections afforded by type 2 if they store tools off premises. And I think it's unfair to punish photographers or graphic designers, for example, by excluding them from type 2's protections simply because they take a tripod out to take photos or they bring a laptop somewhere to show their work to a client. Consider also somebody who attends a meeting at a client site. They bring an easel and one of those post-it paper pads and Sharpies. Those are literally tools. And as it is currently written, there is no exception for small tools. It just says tools used off premises. I think this tool limitation is unfair, and it's a mistake worth correcting before you accept this update, if you do. On section 14, page 26, on the update before you tonight, it proposes that type 2 home occupations should be prohibited from receiving outside assistance. Those are words from the ordinance update. I think that is unfair in this day and age when outsiders may assist via telecommunications in ways that do not affect the residential character of our neighborhoods. Yet as currently proposed, outside assistance is prohibited without exception. And I think that's unfair. You can tell unfairness is the subject of my comments today. The proposed update still specifies floor space percentages, which I believe are unfair and arbitrary and very difficult, if not impossible, to enforce. The new language prohibits the storage of large equipment, another phrase from the ordinance, at a home occupation. I find that to be ambiguous. It could be used against people with work vehicles, as vehicles are not excluded from the definition of large equipment. And as written, it does not care if such equipment is out of sight. It's excluded regardless. If it's contained out of public view within one's own dwelling or accessory structure, I see not why for size alone it should be prohibited. I believe it is unfair and frankly a little patronizing to ask home workers to initial every bullet point on a self-certification form because they want to be productive in their own homes. Tens of thousands of laws apply to all of us every day in America, and we aren't required to initial each one, they just apply. Federal, state, and local laws are available online, and they don't need to be initialed to be enforced against people. It should be adequate for city staff to provide a copy of the ordinance that you eventually pass to those who ask for it, and those that they feel staff feels necessary to obtain proof, they can do so via certified mail. I think that would be most respectful and fair. I don't think it's fair to target profitable residents for additional regulation and government disclosure, especially not to satisfy less than one complaint per month. I don't think it's fair for the city to tell neighbors what's happening in each other's homes. That seems a little inappropriate to me and borderline gossipy. All this said, I do genuinely appreciate the time the staff and the Planning Commission have gone on to put into this ordinance so far, but in the interest of doing our very best for residents of Merriam, I feel we should rescind our home occupation ordinance entirely and focus on the nuisance behaviors without conditioning those regulations on income. Or given the three choices set forth earlier today, I think it is worth sending this back to back to the Planning Commission to ask for these few final improvements. Thank you for considering my comments.
Anyone else wish to come forward?
How are you? It's been a long time.
Name and address, please.
My name is Philip Klein. I'm an activist. I've been involved with Merriam for how many years?
Since the 90s.
Yeah, since the 90s. One thing I want to say is a lot of this is being covered under the Homes Association. And you're kind of taking it away from a lot of the Homes Association with a lot of this, especially with, some of the deals. The question I want to ask the city attorney, has she really looked at this as a constitutional muster?
It passes constitutional muster 100%.
Are you sure about that? Because I've talked to two lawyers, and they say that this does not, number one may, but number two is very iffy on constitutional, and you could possibly leave yourself open for litigation, is what they say on a lot of this. So I think you may want to go back and look at it on that.
Thank you for your development.
Feel welcome.
Anyone else wish to come forward?